My Lady of the Sea, an express horror story, written by Stephen Sinclair, narrated by Naya Nomikou. 1. The painter, John MacDonald, wept. Normally he did not express much emotion, to such an extent that at Harvard there had been jests about his cold northern heritage, and he'd been called Dead John and Rock MacDonald. But the truth had, of course, been that, like many of his kind, he felt things so deeply that they could not be expressed with southern frivolity. His sentiments were too vast. But he bitterly wept now, because he could no longer paint, couldn't even hold the brush. He tried, and it had fallen pathetically from his grasp. The disease had progressed to the stage where his fingers not only curled inwards, they actually seemed to have shortened. The mottled growths of skin between them grown worse. The tears flowing down his face stung the scabrous eczema-encrusted skin. He'd thrown the salve his physicians had given him for this away weeks ago. It did no good. The only thing that brought some relief: seawater. Particularly at the miserable itchy wattles on his neck. He wiped the tears away with the backs of his hands, and his condition had worsened. It had become impossible to blink them away. Wretchedly he looked out from the mouth of the cave, across the bay, at the ruined church. The church stood in a strange place, on the slope of the mountain that reared stark and massive above the ocean, as if it had been placed there as a challenge to the waters. It was located directly opposite the cave, separated by half a mile of storm-lashed sea. In the driving rain, thunder, and lightning, the old cross-shaped ruin, white, lichen-covered stones, seemed to move like a ship in a storm. MacDonald had come to this place in the old country to hide himself. He, who back in 1845 had once been called the American Rembrandt, when his work had been shown in Boston and New York. The place offered solitude. He'd been promised by his relatives, and he'd been well aware they told the truth, because they had forced their own tenants out years before. Now that the changes meant they no longer needed them as warriors, but instead needed money to fund their London townhouses and tours of the continent. John had been very glad none of his cousins were there, for more than one reason. He had discovered the cave many weeks before. It was fairly shallow, but he'd been taken with a view. There were the curious carvings on the walls. Crosses. Many crosses. The centuries had soothed the wounds in the stone. but it looked to John MacDonald as if other carvings had once been there and been savagely obliterated. The Christian symbols superimposed on the despoiled places, and near the floor, a curious carving of a fish. He was well aware of the traditional biblical significance, but somehow he wasn't convinced. It looked as if the image was an example of the older, now long gone designs, left deliberately. It was positively crowded round by the crude cross symbols, as if to keep it caged in. 2. He'd, in his wandering, first seen the woman shortly after finding the cave. She was always in the distance. Once, and once only, she'd been near. But when he hurried to the place where she'd lain supine on the rocks of the seashore, her hair blowing in the wind, she'd disappeared. There had only been long tresses of seaweed. But she came to him in his dreams and spoken to him in a voice of ineffable sweetness and utter inhumanity. Come to me, unsunken one, you who have been promised to me since the beginning. Kin of Yahantley, you who have always claimed you don't remember the night your false father put the pillow on your mother and sister's faces, when he discovered the papers in the bureau that told him she was not called Bernice Jackson, but Bernice Marsh, and how the servants dragged him away before he could take you from me. Come into the deeps. There is, in our true Father's shadow, peace and serenity and secret knowledge. In our true Mother's many arms, there is immortal life. Come into the arms of the ocean. And John now understood. He turned to the wall of the cave, reached down and pressed the eye of the fish. And the cave wall swung silently aside, and from the yawning opening there came the murmur of the ocean, like the sound that comes from a shell to the ear. The storm outside was forgotten, and there came the slap, slap, slap of many flat, webbed feet. They merged, and his beloved with them. It was his time.